Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing super well. Now, the subject of this video today is quite an uncomfortable one. So if certain people are triggered by children being mistreated, which I would imagine quite a few people are, you are obviously, I always say, welcome to not watch this type of video. But again, this is a video where I wanted to raise further awareness of a practice which is completely unacceptable, and this is why I wanted to do this video today. When I do videos on my channel, guys, there are videos that I do because they're fun and enjoyable, like vlogs, and there are videos that I do which are of a lot more serious subjects because more awareness needs to be raised of them, and this is one of those videos. So today in this video we're going to be talking about Bazi, or the practice of Bazi. What is Bazi? So Bazi, essentially, it's termed as several things. It means dancing boys, it means, you know, boy and game, play a game with a boy. There's a few different sort of terms for it. So just by that alone, I think you can start to understand, right, this is something that is not quite right. I've met very few people who actually know of this practice. I first heard about it maybe 10 or 12 years ago, probably, yeah, at least over 10 years ago I heard of this, and I saw a documentary on TV, and after that day I never ever saw anything about this on TV or on the internet. Today I was doing research because I want to do a series of videos about Afghanistan on my channel and some of the human rights violations and things that go on there, and I was actually researching another topic for another video, and then I remembered this topic of Bazi, and I thought I need to do this video. So Bazi, guys, is something that has been around for around 1,000 years or more, so it's a very old practice in actual fact, but it's something that started to kind of dissipate and disappear over the years, and then the last 20 or 30 years or so it's something that has become a lot more rife again. This is a practice which is present essentially in Iran, Afghanistan and some parts of Lebanon. However, I would say the majority of cases that are heard about nowadays tend to come out more from Afghanistan. So as I said, guys, at the beginning of this video, Bazi essentially means dancing boys or boy game or like play game, right? So essentially what it is in straight terms, I want to say, is older men that are in their like 40s, 50s, 60s that purchase boys, specifically boys that could be 5, 6, 7 years old up to, I want to say, their mid-teens, maybe 15, 16 years old. This is a situation where these boys are not kidnapped or stolen, they have been sold to these much older men. And some of you are going to think, like, what parents are going to sell their kids for money to a man who's 40, 50, 60 years old, and specifically sell boys, not girls? These are parents, guys, in Afghanistan that are in extreme poverty. Afghanistan is a country that has been through loads of wars, that was, you know, overseen by US military, that's got the Taliban. That country is a country where so much destruction has gone on, and the citizens that still live there are often in extreme poverty, and as such you have parents that will sell their young boys to these older men. And so these parents maybe have more children and they need to feed their kids, and they have no other option. And remember, guys, that this is a country where I'd say out of a lot of countries in the world, this is one where women have the fewest legal rights in regards to education, work and things like that. They have very few legal rights. So if they have no job, they have nothing, maybe their husband's died or something, the only option for them that they see is to sell their young boy to an older man. So essentially the child is sold to an older man, and as I've seen, guys, it's always older men that are 40, 50, 60 years old. It's not like a man who's 20 years old or something, right? So these are often men that have a wife or sometimes several wives, and they essentially get these boys to entertain them. So if they invite people around for dinner, so they're doing like a dinner party, for example, they'll invite their male older friends around as well, and all these older men will sit down in the living room and they'll be watching these very young boys dance in front of them, which already, to be quite honest, is very uncomfortable, right? But then the owner of this boy or boys will then have sexual relations with the boy, and not only will he have them, he will also then encourage his friends to do the same thing to those children. I have to say, when I saw the documentary about this, and this was over 10 years ago, I was sitting there like, I watched so many documentaries, guys. I'm fascinated about things that go on in the world or even in the UK that are less known. But this one I'd never heard about and never seen anything about it before the day I saw that documentary. And this was one that has always stuck in my mind for all the wrong reasons. And one of the things I kept thinking through the whole documentary is Afghanistan is a Muslim country, and in Islam, homosexuality is a sin, and under Sharia law it's, I think, punishable by death. It's very, very serious. So I kept thinking, how are men able to do this with boys in an Islamic country and get away with it? And apparently the way that people justify it there is it's a boy, not a man, that they're sleeping with, which I think, in my opinion, is even worse, because you're abusing a child. Like, how can you justify that Islamically, religiously, or actually under any context? How can you justify that? And these men have wives, and often their wives are aware, well, their wives are generally aware of what's going on because the boy lives in the house with them. So the wives know that this is going on, but I would say it's not that they don't want to do anything, it's that they're powerless to, because again, Afghanistan has literally no rights for women. So these women are under the rule of their husbands, and they just have to, again, you know, sit there really and just allow their husbands to do this. And obviously, as these children grow up, so when they're going to hit like 18, 19, 20, that's the end of their kind of Bacha Bazi situation with their owner, because they've now become adults. They're not like young boys anymore. So the owner's like, you know, I'm kind of done with this contract with you. It's not really a contract, but anyway. And so that boy or adult, now he is, will leave. And these men that leave after going through that, you know, of course, you know, psychologically traumatized. There is a stigma attached to them in society in Afghanistan, even though they did not ask to be subject to this or be put in this situation. As adults, they're now stigmatized by society in Afghanistan because they've been Bacha Bazi boys. And it is actually unbelievable that someone could abuse a child, get away with it first of all, have that person grow up as an adult, and then that whole society in that country stigmatizes that person for having undergone child abuse. It's like, what the fuck is going on in that country? When I was doing further research, guys, for this video, right, so I just went to Google, you know, I put Bacha Bazi and started doing more research. This Instagram post came up, right, and it took me into Instagram, and there was a video of Bacha Bazi on there, which is a very recent post, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, these people actually have the front to post their abuse on Instagram with children. Why isn't Instagram shutting this down? What the hell is going on here? Now, further information I discovered, which I did not know, you know, 10 years ago or so when I saw the documentary, is, as a lot of people may know, the US military was very present in Afghanistan until I think 2022, and still very recently. So they had a lot of control over the area, and the Taliban didn't have control for many years. So the US military was stationed out there, and it just so happens that the US government was aware of this Bacha Bazi situation, so the abuse of young boys, and actually told their military officials to disregard this and ignore it. Which, considering what's now going on with Israel, and that the US supports Israel in committing a genocide in Gaza, I can't say actually I'm surprised, quite frankly, what the US government is doing. But yeah, it told its military officials to ignore the fact that these young boys are being abused by Afghan police officers and God knows who in Afghanistan. The US government was like, it's not our place to intervene in this kind of cultural situation. Now, I'm sorry guys, but there is culture and culture in different countries, and when it comes to violent abuse towards someone, I don't call that a cultural factor. I call that abuse. I call it for what it is. I don't care what country it's in. That's not culture for me, and that's nothing to do with the culture of it. I mean, it's toxic culture of the country then. It's not a culture, right? So the US government was like, we shouldn't intervene because that's part of their culture and that's for them to deal with it. We shouldn't intervene. So it told all its military officials not to intervene and to just let these men abuse these boys, essentially. So essentially, the US government thought it was okay to send their military out to Afghanistan, do whatever they want out there when it's not their country. But when it comes to the abuse of children, they felt it's not their place to intervene, which is very interesting. In the documentary that I saw years ago as well, the reporter that was undercover filming this at the time went to like a market there, and he'd heard that there were like, back then, you know, everyone used to buy like DVDs and stuff. So he'd heard that there were kind of like these DVD ROMs, these pirate copies of DVDs sold in the market of Bacha Bazi. So he's gone to the market now, and he gets there and he's got his undercover camera, and lo and behold, there is a whole stand. I don't even know how long the stand was, like meters long, with all these bloody CD-ROMs, DVDs on it, and they are all of Bacha Bazi, these dancing boys under the control of these older men on camera. Like, I was just like, how are people even selling this? Now, apparently before the US went to Afghanistan to take more control of it, and after the US initially left Afghanistan in 2022, the Taliban obviously had control of Afghanistan, and they wanted to enforce Sharia law. So they were like, under Sharia law, this is homosexuality, so this is not acceptable. So they started to ban it. They started to do death sentences and death penalties for the perpetrators, but they would actually also, you know, sentence these poor children to death even though they had not asked for this, which again is insane. And so yeah, this is a situation which is, I'd say, in a lot of other countries is incomprehensible, and in a lot of Muslim countries they would not justify something that is so disgusting and vile and despicable towards a child having to endure this. And there have even been cases, guys, where top Taliban warlords or Afghan police have been sleeping with these boys, and they're like high officials as well, and they just get away with it. And it's like, how is this like this? And there are even cases, guys, of men, so when I say men, these 40, 50, 60-year-olds that will stand in the street and literally argue over who should own a child, like a boy, and then just stand there disputing it like it's completely normal. Like, imagine you're in the centre of town and you're having an argument with someone over who should sleep with this child. Like, how is this something that is even normalised in Afghanistan? And in 2024, the day and age that we live in, I still don't comprehend how abuse towards women, children or animals is acceptable anywhere in the world. For me, people who perpetrate this are uneducated and have psychological conditions, and they should be locked up for life. Or, guys, until very recently, I was never an advocate for the death sentence, but in my opinion, people that abuse children specifically, they should have the death sentence. And there needs to be more awareness of this practice raised, because it needs to be stopped. It needs to be stopped immediately. It should have been stopped years ago, even hundreds of years ago. It should have been stopped. And these men, they intermingle with imams, with scholars in Afghanistan that preach in mosques, and then these men go home and abuse these children. And I'm like, wow, you actually think you have a right to practice Islam, and I don't know what version of Islam that is, and go home and then do this to a child? And there's imams and scholars, etc., that are even aware of this in Afghanistan, and they're not doing anything to stop this. Anyway guys, I will leave this video here. Leave any comments down below, let me know your thoughts. You can leave me suggestions for future videos as well, and please raise awareness of this guys if you can, and I will see you again very, very soon, of course, for another video.